This is a story about children and calling in hill country. It's about facing giants and working to show Christ's love to the poor, sick, and hungry. It's a story Lindy and I feel blessed to be a part of. We want you to hear it and hope you'll become a part of it too.
Jason spent his childhood in the Midwest and South America. His parents were missionaries in Sao Paulo, Brazil, and from an early age he knew he needed to do something in his life that would make a difference in the lives of children. And so he became a 5th grade teacher, and he lived in San Antonio, Texas.
Lindy grew up in the hill country of South Texas. The daughter of a head football coach, she had hopes of becoming a sports broadcaster. But while in college, her focus changed and she became a CPA for a large accounting firm in San Antonio, Texas.
In 2002, Jason took his first trip to Mozambique, Africa, and the poverty and need he saw there was staggering. It was during his first trip that he began to feel God asking him if he would be willing to do more to help the Lord's weakest children. And at that time, he had a lot of fears about the reality of missionary life. How would he find a wife if he was living in Mozambique? And what about support raising? He'd seen his parents do that as he grew up, and that just wasn't something he was willing to do. And so he wrestled with the calling for quite a few years.
The key verse in Lindy's life was and is Jeremiah 29:11. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not harm you, plans to give you hope in a future. She knew she needed to trust God with her life and future, and that no matter what happened, He was going to be with her. He would give her strength and peace to do whatever He'd asked her to do. When she and I met, I quickly exposed her to the idea of being a missionary and a missionary life. She wasn't familiar with it at all. A lot of the realities are and were pretty scary. Walking away from her career, having to live off support, living overseas, taking babies overseas. Our courtship proved to be a pretty big time of testing for both of us for a while there. But Lindy held on to the words of Jeremiah and trusted that God had plans for her and that He would not bring her into harm's way.
I began to date Jason at a pretty unique point in his life. He'd finally surrendered his fears of marriage and finances to God and accepted his calling. The decision came after a very intense experience that revealed how God saw him. He knew Jason's deeds, and they were neither hot nor cold, and it became undeniably clear that he needed to choose one or the other. So it was after Jason said yes to his calling that we met and started dating.
God was working in our lives individually and together, and it didn't take us long to figure out that we were right for each other. And so we said, I do together, and then we said yes to God's calling in our lives, and we pressed forward in hope and expectation. So what is it we're called to do? We're called to serve God's weakest children around the world. We find the Lord's weakest children in places referred to as hill country, where giants of poverty and ignorance and hunger and illness wreak havoc on the people. Places like Mozambique, where on my first trip I watched an 8-month-old baby, bone thin, sick beyond repair, breathe her very last breath in her mother's arms. The mom was also ill, had no food to give her baby. The witch doctor she turned to a few days earlier had cut the baby to bleed out the disease, and which only made things worse. The baby and her mother lived in hill country, and the giants of ignorance and illness took that sweet baby's life. And her end is found by countless other babies on a daily basis around the world. And it's to these kind of children, it's to these mothers and these communities that we want to serve and help. And that's who God has called us to.
We decided to serve in the hill country among the giants with Children's Relief International, which is a small nonprofit organization founded by Jason's parents. And CRI takes a twofold approach to missions. One is to focus on the poor, and the second is to carry out the work in partnership with Native leaders who are part of their community we serve. So CRI has projects and leaders throughout the world. The Ray of Light project is in Mozambique, and it is led by Geronimo and Noemia Sisitu. The Mayatima project is led by George and Jane Karanga in Kenya. The Rowlands are in Nigeria. The King of Kings project is led by the Gadamakala brothers in Rajamundry, India. The Mud Pass project is led by Simriti in Calcutta, India. And finally, the Lawrences are in Ranchi, India.
And as we focus on the poor through these partnerships, through these national leaders, we work towards 4 outcomes. The first outcome is the growth of the church. Jesus said, man does not live on bread alone, but by every word that comes from the mouth of God. The spiritual and moral aspects of Christ's work came first, and so we place the church first in our ministry. Our ministries are intended to build the church, and the church in turn builds into our programs. We've seen success, the construction of church plants at our projects with the Situs in Mozambique and in India with the G Brothers, and with pastor training and pastor sponsorships.
The second outcome is the care and education of children. And this includes basic needs for food, clean water, shelter, clothes, medical care, and education. And our goal is to both enable our children to grow into the knowledge of Christ and gain the competence and character to do well in society. And as one of our African partners says, if you have fed and clothed my people for their whole life, but you have not changed their character, you've done too little.
The third outcome I look for is work that provides a living. Work is the foundation of human life and development, and it's through work that humans find dignity and purpose and fulfill God's command to subdue the earth and rule over it. Two of the programs that are specifically designed for job creation is microloan programs that we have running right now in India and in Mozambique, as well as VOTEC training to train the young men and women in Kenya as well as in India. This photo here is of a woman in the rock quarry, which is outside Rajahmundry, India. She's about 35 years old, and she's already lived and worked in the rock quarry for over 20 years. With 4 children to care for, it's been hard for her to keep them fed. At one point, she thought about committing suicide. But then she heard some women talking about Christ and about children's relief in a microfinance program. And she visited the church, and she applied for the loan, and she was so excited when she received it. And with tears, she said, "I never expected that God would do a miracle in my life." And now she's a believer in Christ, and she attends the Rock Quarry Church. Fourth outcome we look for is a rise in quality of life. We seek a reasonable well-being for everyone in our programs, starting with the children and then extending to their families and outward into the community. The quality of life should increase in ways that continue after our intervention is no longer needed. 7 of our programs are designed to raise the quality of life in the communities that we serve. There's an emergency fund called the Amelia Fund in Mozambique. We have capital projects running at all of our projects in Kenya and India, in Nigeria, in Mozambique. We have Green Door Housing, which is providing housing for the poor and the homeless in Mozambique. We have food pantry and a nutrition program at our sites, clean water well drilling. We have a medical clinic in Mozambique and in Kenya, and Project Life, AIDS outreach for the widows and the children in the community that are infected.
We believe in CRI's approach to focusing on the poor through those national leaders and have joined them in their efforts. And not only do we believe in the 4 outcomes, but we have seen the results and are excited to be a part of it.
Our personal vision is to serve God's weakest children by helping CRI reach Hill Country all over the world. We can help our existing partners reach their goals and grow their programs. And I hope that in the next 10 years, we can start new programs, reaching new Hill Country. There's great need out there, and national leaders who love Christ and their communities, and they need help. They need our help. And we're praying that God will lead us where He needs us to go. To make this happen, CRI needs help managing existing projects and staff and someone who can help pursue this growth.
Jason recently completed a master's in cross-cultural ministries at Dallas Theological Seminary and has now taken on the role of Vice President of Operations at Children's Relief. And his degrees and backgrounds in school administration, curriculum and instruction, and elementary education are really coming in handy as the role requires wearing a lot of hats. His duties include assessment, endorsement, and training of staff and partners, defining strategies, goals, and operational budgets for the projects, overseeing accountability and reports on performance, creating and facilitating community through social media, teams, interns, fundraisers, identifying organizational needs, recommending strategy and policies to meet them, and of course, special assignments. Many of his responsibilities require that he work from the home office here in Rockwall, but he expects to travel at least 4 times a year to visit the projects overseas and supporters and staff around the U.S.
Once fully supported, Lindy will step away from her part-time role as a CPA and take on 2 roles. The first will be working part-time for CRI as a bookkeeper and a human resource specialist, helping with missionary packages and all the number crunching that we need done. And then she'll also be a stay-at-home mom, taking care of our little ones in our home. We want you to consider becoming part of our story by joining our financial support team. Our goal is to become fully supported by the end of April 2011. So join us as we serve in the Hill Country. Help us slay the giants. We really need your support.